to was in Humboldt County, which is Northern California. And from Humboldt, California to where we lived was about a 4-hour drive. And so we were driving through there's the Redwood Forest there. And right before you get to Crescent City, it's just all redwoods. And there's nothing out there.
I know this.
Literally nothing out there. And I was driving up there with my friend who was asleep in the passenger side, and it was pretty late at night. It was like 12:30 in the evening. And we were driving home, and like I just happened to have the window down to try and keep me awake because I was falling asleep.
Yeah.
And there was like a really big scream. And it sounded somewhat female.
Like blood-curdling scream, or
like my hair raised up,
right?
And just like this random scream, and it sounded somewhat female, but it was too. This is strange, but it sounded too deep to be a female. And it was
like something mimicking being a female, or
could
just
be.
You perceived it like it should have been female, or
when I first heard it, I thought.
Immediate thought.
My immediate thought was it could be a female in distress. However, I also knew that didn't sound like a female.
Right.
It just was a scream, and it was one of those ones where it wasn't like high pitched, but it was one that, like, you know, when you hear a loud noise, your eardrums kind of pop a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was so loud that it woke up my friend who was asleep in the passenger seat, and then I heard that original one, which woke him up, and then we heard a second one.
Right.
And we're in the middle of nowhere.
Could you discern any type of thing they were saying or screaming about?
It just was a scream.
Huh.
And there's no campsites, there's nothing around it.
Right.
Like nothing. There's not even pullouts.
Right.
It just was very strange. Like I said, just very strange.
Right. Interesting. That's got to be so scary when you're driving in the middle of the night.
Middle of the night. Just trying literally in the middle of nowhere, because from Eureka, California to Crescent City is about a 2-hour drive.
Right.
Maybe an hour and a half.
With a lot of dead woodland area.
It's just redwoods. That's all it is.
Okay. Wow, that's not scary at all.
Yeah.
So, what your friend, when you guys talked about it later, what did you guys land on, or did you decide anything? Or
well, because obviously the first one he didn't quite hear because he was sleeping.
Right.
But when we talked about it later, he felt that it was very strange too, because it sounded, like I said, it sounded a lot like a female, but it wasn't high pitched. It was more.
Now, and you're driving down the road like 50, 60 miles an hour. So you're covering enough ground that you shouldn't have heard a second scream.
Exactly.
Enough to wake somebody up.
Exactly.
And so that's...
So something, because the second one, that's a good point. The second one was basically as loud as the first one.
Right.
So whatever.
Enough to wake up the person in the passenger.
And this is, that road is windy, but it's pretty much going north.
Right.
North and south.
So you would have covered a lot of ground in the meantime. So if it was somebody in the woods in distress, you probably would have heard the second
one
scream.
very loud.
Right.
I mean, we could probably have heard the second one,
but not enough to wake them up
exactly.
on the second.
It's very strange.
Huh. Wow, that's very scary. And you drove that road how many times would you say?
At that point, probably 6 or 7. They never heard anything.
Yeah.
Probably the strangest thing to that point was we got to north of Gold Beach, and there's a state trooper office there, and I had a state trooper follow me with his lights off, and then he passed me with his lights on. That's the strangest thing that ever occurred.
And no, you ever check any missing person reports or anything for that time frame, or because it doesn't seem like it should.
But if it was a missing persons report, they would have had to have moved probably, just a rough guess, 5 miles.
In between screams?
In like a 2-minute time frame.
Right. Because
I was probably realistically driving 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So I covered a few miles. So they would have had to cover that. Because it's not like I'd understand it if we were in a canyon and it would reverberate.
Right.
But we were in a canyon. We were up basically up on a bluff just surrounded by
So what about
redwoods.
The fact that just because there is a sheer amount of nothing out there, you'll be able to hear things a lot further. But the Redwood Forest, for those who haven't been there, is so incredibly dense that if you walk 50 yards into it and just do a bunch of circles and try and find your way back out, good luck. It's extremely dense.
And sound just disappears.
It does.
It's not like I said, it's not like
it's not a carrying.
If we were in a canyon and somebody was screaming, I probably wouldn't think anything about it like obviously somebody's in distress, but what do you do? Because there's literally no roads, there's no campsites, and there's no pull-offs. So what do you do?
Yeah. Wow. No, that's sketchy. Very scary.
Anyways, those are my, and I've had other small things like inclinations, like people watching you, or I guess I should say this one. This one was like 18 or 19. My brother, my older brother, at the time was picking mushrooms as a part-time job. He would go collect mushrooms and sell them. And so we went mushroom picking one day, and we wound up on one of the sites. And so we went out there, like one of the sites that he normally picks, and there's usually a lot of mushrooms. And so we went out there, and it had previously been cut. It was owned by a logging company, and so it had previously been cut. And the trees are probably 8 to 10 feet, but they're all, because they're planted, they're all uniform. The branches are somewhat low. But we went out into this area that he normally gets mushrooms, and all the mushrooms had been picked out of the ground, and they were all in the trees. They were sitting on the lower few levels of the trees. No idea why. It made my brother nervous enough to where he said, let's get out of here.
Yeah, because the point of picking mushrooms, for those who have never done it, is if you find a patch, since it's a fungus, it grows in a group area where the spores dissipate into the lower woodlands there, and it'll grow more every single year in the same
spot. In the lower level, the branches weren't like thick enough to where something could grow on them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like
well, that type of mushroom that you're out there picking doesn't generally grow on trees.
They're all done first, so the branches aren't very thick.
Right. Okay. And again, to paint the picture for those unfamiliar with the forest in the Pacific Northwest, these mushrooms are ground-dwelling mushrooms that grow out, and they're profitable. So if you pick enough of them per pound and take them into a mushroom buyer, they give you a cash amount for the mushrooms that you go out and pick. However, the fact that they would be in trees and that somebody would pick a valuable thing like that and spend their time putting it in the trees is either ritualistic or something paranormal is going on, because it doesn't make sense that,
like I said, I don't know what it was. It just was strange. And
because anyone out picking mushrooms would not hike out into the forest to pick a patch of mushrooms to display, in the hopes that in enough time before they shriveled up to nothing, that someone would stumble upon those, find them, and be scared by it. That's not a thing that would happen.
For someone at that point who was a fairly experienced mushroom picker, like he'd been doing it for years and years, for him to look at me and say, "We need to get out of here," was something.
Now, do you think he was following his instincts?
Probably instincts. Like just because it was like, why would something or someone do that?
Right.
Like, why would somebody take the mushrooms out of the ground? Because you could clearly tell at the bottom of the mushroom that they had been pulled, because you could see the roots in the dirt from them.
Right.
It just was strange.
And no animal would do that.
Not that I know of.
That's scary and interesting.
Now, I will say there is people out that live in the woods out there that my brother has run into, but he's never seen anything like that, or at that point.
What would be the point? And again, like for the people not in the Pacific Northwest, here's a good, just for instance, to give you to wrap your head around the vastness of the woods up here.
Yeah.
So the United Kingdom, square mileage wise, is 1 square mile smaller than Oregon.
Yeah.
Just the state of Oregon.
It's huge.
So the state of Oregon has 5 million people in it. The country of the UK has 55 million people in the exact same square footage, 1 mile less. So that just kind of gives you an idea of, like, you can't go to England without hitting another town.
Yeah.
You can go 50 plus miles in any direction in some parts of Oregon and not run into another town.
If you pick a direction from where we're at, if you pick a direction and you walk 100 miles, maybe you run into a handful of people.
You might find an outlying property or something, but you're not going to find like a whole city structure. It's not like going to Central Park or something. It is massive.
Yes, the way in Oregon is, the way our cities are, they're like in certain areas, and then there's
next to the highways.
And there's hundreds of square miles.
Vastness.
Nothing.
Yes.
I mean, obviously besides wildlife. Other than that, there's nothing.
And so the fact that that someone would go out to a mushroom picking spot that is known to generally just the mushroom pickers who pick those areas, and maybe some hunters that travel through it. Not a lot of people. We're talking on two hands. You could probably count the amount of people that travel there per year.
I'm talking about trees and trees. I'm not talking about one tree. I'm
Right.
talking about trees and trees. So whoever or whatever did it spent some
Harvested
time,
mushrooms
spent some time
and
doing
then displayed them.
Because if you know anything about, especially the way they replant our forests, for every tree that they cut, they have to plant. I can't remember if it's 5 to 7, but so we have a very dense forest where we replant. So you have tree after tree after tree, like probably every 6 to 10
Social
feet.
distancing.
Yeah, they're social
6 feet
distancing.
apart. Yeah. No, that's
So
very interesting.
My few weird stories, like I said, are they paranormal? Or they, can they be explained? Maybe they can. I don't know. I'm just telling you what my strange story was.
I like it.